Good afternoon to everyone in this incredible blue and silver nation. Today is Friday, and the Detroit Lions have made a lot of major investments in recent years, and if you've been following this team closely, you've probably noticed something important. Brad Holmes and the front office have consistently shown a willingness to reward their own players when they believe those players are foundational pieces of the franchise. Time after time, we've watched Detroit hand out significant contracts to key members of the roster, and in almost every case, those decisions have made complete sense. Think about some of the names that have already received those extensions. Amon-Ra St. Brown received a massive deal worth around $30 million per year. At the time, nobody doubted his importance, but it was still a huge commitment. Since then, he's continued proving exactly why he deserved every dollar. Penei Sewell received one of the largest contracts ever given to an offensive lineman, approaching $30 million annually, and he has continued playing at an elite level. Even Jameson Williams, who at one point represented a much bigger gamble because of the questions surrounding his development, was given a significant commitment. Some fans were understandably nervous when they saw the numbers attached to that deal, but so far the investment appears to be paying off. Of course, football is a brutal sport, and not every contract comes without risk. Players like Aleem McNeil and Kirby Joseph have dealt with injuries, reminding everyone how quickly circumstances can change in the NFL. But when a team believes it has an all-pro caliber player, eventually that player must be paid like one. That's simply the reality of competing for championships. And now the Lions have made another major decision by committing to Jack Campbell. What's fascinating about this particular extension is that there is a growing argument that this may actually become one of the smartest investments Detroit has made during this entire era. The reason goes beyond statistics. It goes beyond athletic ability. It goes beyond market value. It starts with who Jack Campbell is as a person. Campbell recently reflected on the criticism that surrounded the Lions' 2023 draft class. Many fans remember how controversial those selections were at the time. National analysts questioned the selections of Jahmyr Gibbs and Jack Campbell almost immediately after they were announced. Some draft grades were incredibly harsh. Campbell himself joked about reading those evaluations and seeing grades that essentially portrayed him as a terrible pick. Instead of showing frustration or bitterness, he laughed about it. What stood out wasn't the humor, it was the mindset behind it. Campbell explained that he never allowed outside opinions to define him. He trusted the people inside the building who believed in him. He trusted his family. He trusted the coaching staff. Most importantly, he remained focused on being the same person every day, regardless of praise or criticism. That's a powerful trait for a player who now wears one of the most important leadership roles on Detroit's defense. When you listen to Campbell speak, you don't hear someone obsessed with headlines. You don't hear someone talking about contracts, recognition, or individual accomplishments. You hear someone who genuinely loves football, someone who loves the process, someone who enjoys the work required to become great. And those qualities matter. The Lions didn't just pay a linebacker. They invested in a leader. They invested in a player who wears the green dot, communicates across the defense, and serves as a stabilizing force for everyone around him. That's not something every talented athlete can do. The impressive part is that Campbell's production fully supports the confidence Detroit is showing in him. Last season, he recorded 110 tackles along with 48 assisted tackles. His missed tackle percentage sat around 7%, an outstanding number for a linebacker carrying such a heavy workload. Even more encouraging is the progress he has made in pass coverage, which was one of the biggest questions surrounding him when he entered the league. The development has been dramatic. When evaluating linebackers through advanced grading systems, Campbell has climbed into elite territory. In fact, one comparison that continues appearing is with Fred Warner, widely considered one of the best linebackers in football. That comparison isn't being made casually. Warner has established himself as the gold standard at the position, yet Campbell's performance metrics have started placing him in the same conversation. While Warner remains the benchmark, Campbell has already reached a level where discussing both players together no longer feels unrealistic. What makes that even more remarkable is Campbell's age. At just 25 years old, he's producing at a level many linebackers don't reach until much later in their careers. Warner was older when he secured his major extension. Campbell is arriving at this stage significantly earlier, which gives Detroit the possibility of controlling some of the absolute prime years of his career. And here's another detail that shouldn't be overlooked. Despite being one of the premier linebackers in the league, Campbell didn't appear focused on resetting the market. Many star players reach extension negotiations wanting to become the highest paid player at their position. That's common throughout professional sports. Yet Campbell's contract structure suggests a player more interested in staying in Detroit and continuing his career with the organization than squeezing every possible dollar out of negotiations. That mentality fits perfectly with the culture Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes have built. The Lions consistently talk about finding players who love football, embrace hard work, and prioritize team success. Jack Campbell has become one of the clearest examples of that philosophy in action. And perhaps the most exciting part for Lions fans is that there may still be another level available. Campbell is already one of the league's best linebackers. His tackling is elite. His instincts continue improving. His leadership is undeniable. Yet there are still areas of his game, particularly in coverage, where additional growth remains possible. If he continues progressing in those aspects of the position, Detroit may not simply have an excellent linebacker. They may have a player capable of becoming one of the defining defensive stars of this era. That's what makes this extension so fascinating. It's not just about rewarding what Jack Campbell has already accomplished. It's about betting on what he can still become. And if everything continues trending in the current direction, the Lions may look back years from now and view this contract as one of the smartest decisions of the Brad Holmes era. So now I want to hear from you, Lions fans. After everything Jack Campbell has already shown on and off the field, do you believe this extension will eventually be remembered as the best contract investment the Detroit Lions have made during this current championship window? The more you examine this situation, the more it becomes clear why the Lions felt comfortable making this commitment now rather than waiting another season. Organizations don't hand out contracts like this based solely on what a player has done. They make these decisions based on what they believe that player will continue to be over the next 4 or 5 years. And when you look at Jack Campbell's complete profile, it's easy to understand why Detroit sees such a safe investment. First, there's the physical side of the equation. Sometimes people forget just how rare Campbell's athletic profile actually is. Coming out of college, he wasn't simply viewed as a productive linebacker. He was viewed as an athletic outlier. His testing numbers placed him among the most athletic linebackers ever measured at the NFL Combine. We're talking about a player with elite size, elite speed, elite intelligence, and elite work ethic all combined into one package. That's an extremely rare combination. Many linebackers are instinctive but lack top-tier athleticism. Others are athletic but struggle with processing information quickly enough at the NFL level. Campbell has steadily shown that he possesses both qualities. Every year since arriving in Detroit, his understanding of the game has improved. His reaction time has improved. His comfort within the defensive system has improved. And the scary thing for opposing offenses is that he's still entering the years that are traditionally considered a linebacker's prime. That's why the contract feels different from some other major deals around the league. The Lions aren't paying for past accomplishments. They're paying for what appears to be an ascending player. And if you think about the direction this defense is trying to go, Campbell sits right in the middle of everything. When Detroit's defense is operating at its highest level, the linebacker position becomes incredibly important. The defensive line creates disruption. The secondary takes away passing windows. But the player connecting all those pieces together is often the linebacker wearing the green dot. That's Jack Campbell. He's the one communicating assignments. He's the one making adjustments. He's the one ensuring everyone is lined up correctly before the snap. He's the one responsible for keeping the defense organized when offenses try to create confusion. Those responsibilities don't always show up on highlight reels, but coaches value them enormously. It's one thing to have a talented player. It's another thing entirely to have a talented player who also functions as the brain of the defense. That's why replacing someone like Campbell would be far more difficult than simply finding another linebacker who can make tackles. The leadership component matters. The consistency matters. The reliability matters. And perhaps that's what stands out most when listening to him discuss his career. Even after receiving a life-changing contract, there doesn't appear to be any indication that his mindset will change. Nothing about his comments suggests a player who has suddenly reached his destination. Instead, he sounds like someone who still believes he's chasing something. That's exactly the mentality coaches dream about. Because one of the biggest challenges in professional sports is maintaining hunger after financial security arrives. Some players naturally lose a little edge. Some players become comfortable. Some players subconsciously relax. Everything we have seen from Jack Campbell suggests he isn't wired that way. His comments about ignoring criticism during the draft process reveal the same mentality that likely helped him become an elite player in the first place. He wasn't motivated by proving analysts wrong. He wasn't obsessed with public perception. He focused on daily improvement and trusted that results would eventually follow. That's a dangerous mindset for the rest of the NFL, because if a player is motivated by external validation, eventually eventually that motivation can disappear once success arrives. But if a player is motivated by love of the game itself, the drive tends to remain. That's what makes this extension so exciting for Detroit. The Lions aren't just securing one of their best defenders, they're securing one of the cultural pillars of the franchise. When Brad Holmes talks about finding Lions players, this is exactly what he's talking about. Players who embrace accountability, players who love competition, players who prioritize team success, players who handle criticism professionally, players who remain the same person regardless of whether they're receiving praise or criticism. Jack Campbell checks every one of those boxes. And as the Lions continue building toward championship expectations, those traits become even more valuable. The pressure surrounding this team is higher than it's ever been. Expectations are no longer about simply reaching the playoffs. Expectations are about competing for championships. Every player must be able to handle that environment. Campbell appears built for it. Now Detroit has ensured that one of the most important pieces of its defense isn't going anywhere for a very long time. The front office has made its statement, the coaching staff has made its statement, and the contract itself sends a very clear message about how highly this organization values Jack Campbell. The only thing left now is to watch how high his ceiling truly is. If his growth continues at the pace we've already seen, how much better can Jack Campbell still become over the next few seasons? And could he eventually establish himself as the best linebacker in all of football? There's also another aspect of this entire discussion that shouldn't be ignored, and that's what Jack Campbell's development says about the Detroit Lions scouting department. Remember where this story started? Back in the 2023 NFL Draft, many national analysts were questioning Detroit's strategy. The Lions selected Jahmyr Gibbs earlier than expected. They selected Jack Campbell earlier than expected. The reaction from outside the organization was immediate criticism. Draft grades were handed out before either player had even participated in a single NFL practice. Fast forward to today, and those evaluations look very different. The Lions trusted their process. Brad Holmes trusted his board. The coaching staff trusted their evaluations. And now Detroit finds itself in a position where both players are viewed